Hello everyone and welcome back to MixBuzz TV mixing and mastering tutorials on YouTube. I'm your host David, and today we talk about something I'm sure many of you will be interested in: loudness. And we are going to talk about why the idea that loudness is achieved at the mastering stage is flawed in the way many people think about it. And instead we're going to talk about how achieving loudness is all about the mix, specifically in ending up with a good crest factor at the end of a mix that will now have the potential to become a loud and good sounding master. I don't see many people discussing this subject. One of the reasons is because it's a very broad one. It's hard to condense and put down in words all the things you can do to achieve a dense, potentially loud mix. From this premise, you probably already figured out that it's not just one thing, one move, one secret, one piece of hardware or plugin. It's instead a pretty intricate process, many little steps that you take throughout the whole mixing process, really. And since we're talking about loudness, a touchy subject somehow, let me get one thing out of the way. Loudness war is still going, and it's not going away for now, so let's get over it. The good news is that it's not nearly as bad as it was years ago, so yeah. Our job as engineers is to make the best out of a bad situation here and get a good sounding mix that is also loud. Loudness doesn't necessarily mean shitty sound. It shouldn't, if done correctly. Labels, radio artists, producers still expect us to meet a certain loudness level. The audience also expect that. And so it's important to be able to get the best sound possible while meeting those expectations. And one thing I can tell you right away is how not to do that, which is slap a limiter at the end of an unbalanced mix with tall peaks all over the place and a shitty crest factor and hope for the best, with the limiter doing 12 or more dB of gain reduction and introducing a ridiculous amount of distortion, making everything sound flat and lifeless. That's not how it's done. Most people think loudness is achieved in mastering, and that's true to some extent, meaning a good mix which has the potential for being loud gets actually brought to level at the mastering stage and not actually at the mixing stage. Why? For multiple reasons. First one is when mixing, we should focus on the good sounding part, not the overall level, and make sure we don't clip anything in our chain. And second, because no matter how light the processing for bringing a mix to a certain level will be, it rarely is completely transparent. And there might be the need for small minor adjustments on, for example, stereo fields, EQ, compression, etc. Small being the key word here. Plus, if we're talking about an album as opposed to a single, you might need to make further adjustments to match one song to another in the context of the album. Small adjustments are the keywords here, and we will also see and hear one of my mixer before and after mastering to give you a real life example of the differences aside from level. So we can say we can mix with loudness in mind. And the first thing is you have to know before starting the mix that a certain level is required for a given track. And then you have to mix accordingly, somehow always keeping in the back of your mind the loudness aspect also, and using mixing techniques that at the end will give you a mix that has a good crest factor. So what's this crest factor? Simply put, is the ratio of peak value to RMS value. Having a good crest factor means that the difference in level between your peaks, usually percussive instruments like drum hits, and the meat of the audio, your average level, is not excessive. Is not too much. That sounds easy enough, but the trick is we all want punchy, dynamic drums that hit you in the face, and that doesn't really go along with having those peaks close, visually speaking, to the dense part of the mix, to your average level, to the bulk of your wave. At least not without some mixing techniques and tricks, some of which we're going to mention today. Disclaimer before showing you the next image: don't look at your mixes. How it sounds is what's important, not how it looks. With that said, having a visual reference I think helps, so I'm gonna show you the waveform of one of my last mixes. This is Limestone Hunting. This is the mix down. It's just the mix, it's not mastered, the track that you're seeing. And as you can see, this waveform looks thick as shit. It has a great crest factor, but as we said before, the important is how it sounds. So I'm gonna play you a snip and let's hear how it sounds.
Down you feel, growing fear you down on your knees while blowing wind made you stumble and cry like a dying breed. Breathing for the last time. They will fall asleep and seal their door.
So yeah, I'm not gonna be the judge of my own mix, but it doesn't sound too bad. Kick and snare hit you hard enough, I think. And as you can see, there's not a 12 dB difference in peaks compared to the meat of the track, to the average level. Overall, there are still very good macro dynamics. Choruses pop up, the energy is moving, it's not a flat line whoosh beginning to end, which I find absolutely boring, and you hear that in many modern mixes today. So what's the secret? Well, like I said, it's not just one thing. The most important, I repeat, the most important thing to get a mix like this is balance. Arrangement has a place, but we are mixing here. Arrangement has been done already, and it's not my business. I mix what I'm sent. So, balance. Yes, I know it's not sexy, but balance is and must be king. Think about this. Get this mix with all the tricks and techniques I put into it, with all the expensive outboard gear I used, and all the time spent on automation, and now take one random element, just one element like bass, or the hi-hat, or the lead vocal, whatever, and turn it up 6 dB louder. The mix is ruined completely. And along with that, its potential to be loud will be gone, because that out of balance element will be the ceiling for your limiting. It will start to distort much earlier than anything else, forcing you to keep the level down. So if there is just one thing out of balance in the mix, that's gonna ruin the potential for the mix to be turned into a loud master instantaneously. So balance is the first thing. Newbie's mistake number 1. Kick or bass too high in level, or too much sub energy, because they can't hear that in their monitoring system. You start compressing and limiting, kick or bass start distorting, triggering the action of the dynamic, and everything goes to shit. I'm sure many of you run into this problem many times. So, see, balance is the first thing. If anything, to make the track sound good, which is, again, the most important thing. But once you have that balance, there are a few things you can do to, 1, make the mix sound even better, and 2, to give it the potential to be loud. And believe it or not, these two things go hand in hand. So what are the things you can use in the mix to get that result? Well, you know them already. Compression is one, dynamic EQ will be another, but arguably the most important is tasteful use of saturation. That's the real key, saturation. Why? Mostly because saturation can tame nominal level of percussive elements, not only without making them sound softer, but in some cases making them sound louder and fatter. And we have a video about that. I will link it here and in the info box down below. In this way, you simply gain more headroom before clipping. You use this mostly on transients, percussive material, and anything that has tall peaks, so to speak. Could be a vocal, kick, snare, you got the point. The second, similar but different mode of action of saturation is to use it to simply add density to a track. In this case, you're not really trying to shave transients, but adding harmonic content to a track. So now your average level, your RMS, is higher. Even if you have the same peak, now you have a better, smaller crest factor. Make sense? I hope it does. You use this approach on bass, for example, on synth pads, guitars, and we'll see a few examples in this mix here. Different types, different kind of saturation. You have to put down the time here and figure out which one works better for any given track, because nothing changes so drastically case by case as saturation does. Saturation can be obvious, can be musical, it can be subtle, it can be masked. Again, no graph, no analyzer can help you here. You have to use your ears, and there are no shortcuts, unfortunately. You have to put down the time. And I want to stress this, to find the right kind of saturation is key. On a mix, for me, it's not uncommon to use up to 6 or 8 different types, different kinds of saturation. Study the different types on different material. Not while you're mixing, of course, in your spare time. Look at it as training so that you are efficient when mix time comes. You already know which kind of saturation you like the best for a given track or a given instrument. In mixing, you will take baby steps, eating up 1 dB here, shaving off 2 dB there with saturation, and a mix of compression and limiting, which, yes, by the way, is used in mixing. Limiting, I mean. And I know some people say, oh, you never use limiting in mixing. No, you use limiting in mixing a lot. So yeah. So let's take a look at some of the processing in this particular mix, which, as we saw, ended up having a good crest factor. This track has been released, and you can listen to the final product in our SoundCloud page, link in the info box down below. We somehow analyzed this particular mix already in previous videos, specifically in the how to mix into a 2-bus analog chain video, which I'm linking here and in the info box down below. I'm saying this because for this track, well, for the whole album really, I mixed into 2 Neves 542's tape emulators into my West Audio Dione on the 2-bus. And that was a big part of the overall sound. So just because I don't have those 2 units, nothing will sound even close to the final mix. But I didn't have just that. I had a lot of hardware going on here, at least 14 or 18 analog channels. So things are really going to sound different here. But as long as you keep that in mind, I can still show you what I need for the purpose of this video. Let's take a look at some of the channels. So I've noticed that in this mix, I don't really have too much saturation going on single channels, because I was really pushing the Neves on the 2-bus. And so a big chunk of the overall saturation was coming from there, denying the need for more processing on single tracks. But still, we have some, and this wants to be just an example. So let's take a look. So let's start at the top, for example, with the kicks. On the SSL channel, I'm hitting the yellow light at times. And this is a bit of saturation that tames the transients and make the kick a little fatter. It's nothing major, again, baby steps. You see, it hits the yellow light here and there. Then what we have a lo-fi saturation on this snare here, which is the second verse, if I remember correctly. And it's followed by a limiter. So again, in this case, we tame the transient and we make the snare a little fatter. Let's see without these 2. With them. Okay, so the lo-fi gives us some grit, and the limiting pushed this hard, it gives the snare more sustain, especially for that ringing tone. But if you take a look at the level, the nominal level, this is going to be lower. So we hit peaks of -4 with nothing on, without the lo-fi and the limiting. With the lo-fi and the limiting, that's a big difference. It's -8, the peak. And the snare itself sounds a lot louder with these two, but it has 4 dB less of nominal level. See? Saturation and limiting combined. Then let's see what we have. Scrolling down. I don't have any saturation on the snare sum. We have, I don't know how many snare, 1, 2, 2 snares. And it's unusual for me not to have any saturation on this sum channel, but there's a reason for that, and I remember clearly, and the reason is this. I sent my snare to my hardware 1176s, and I squashed the living shit out of them. And this is the result. Let me solo this track. And all the snares were going here. The sample, I have one sample, and the original snare, you can hear the hi-hat bleed. But it was compressed really, really hard, maybe in all bottom mode. And I printed it because I needed the 1176s for something else. But the point here is, look at this track. It's very, very dense. Okay, it has the pingy attack. You can hear, but the difference between the peak and the average level is still very low. So it's a very dense track. And if we add it to our snare, that's what gives us density. Without. Let's listen to this bit here without. With. Is a big difference. So basically this track, what it does is increases our average level and the sustain of the snare without raising the nominal level or raising it just a little bit. So yeah, that's another thing. We have a parallel compression for kick. That does pretty much the same thing, increases the density of the kick without raising the nominal level, the peak. Then let's see what we have. One very important, unfortunately missing here, my drummer 1178 compressor, which was on the whole drum bus. And I think I have the recall picture for the settings. If I have, I'll post it here. But saturation would have been around 9-10 o'clock usually. But I usually hit up to 6 dB on that compressor for the drum, and the mix knob is about 70-80%. That will definitely decrease the peak levels and increase the density of the whole drum. And so it does this plugin, which I absolutely love for drums, and specifically I love its clipping section. And this is gonna be a big difference. Let me show you. I don't use the compression on this compressor on the drums. I just use the soft clipping section. So let's hear with. So it's a mid-side mode, and you can see the soft clip lighting up only on few hits of snare, toms, and kicks here and there, but it is very light. But for what we are interested in today, we're gonna need to look at the peak level. Without this soft clip circuit in, we average in -4, and as you can see, we even clip with the tom hits. With the soft clip engaged, we basically gain almost 10 dB of headroom. And now focus on the sound. It doesn't really change that much. This is why I love this particular plugin for this particular processing. So pretty much it shaves off something like 10 dB of peak nominal level without changing the overall sound too much. And if it does, it makes it sit a little better, especially on the tom hits. It makes sit the drum right in the track. Keeping in mind that there's no hardware here and everything sounds completely different, but you need to trust me about that. So yeah, that's a nice trick that I'm giving away for free. But yeah, the Elysia compressor soft clip circuit is amazing. I like it so much that it really makes me want to try the hardware, but I don't because it's like 10 grand. So yeah, let's go on. So far we've seen pretty much saturation used on transients material, so taming the nominal peak while retaining the punch and augmenting it when possible. But there's also the other mode of action, like I said, which is adding density to non-transient oriented material, for example, bass. And I have a bass track here, actually two, and they both go to the bass sum aux track. And here I have the Ozone Exciter, which is one of my favorite saturation plugins. Definitely my favorite for bass. So as you can see, I have the tape algorithm on, and I'm only using it in this low mid band here. None of the other ones are engaged. So let's hear it without. With. Again, it's subtle, but the mix is just at 20%, but it adds a little bit of density. And like I said, baby steps throughout all the mixing process. And there are a few more things, but you get the point. There's also a saturation channel parallel for the vocals, which is just the Sharp 73 with the drive preamp turned up a bit, enough to start distorting. And again, this is just to add density. And so you get the point. Many little things done through the whole mix give you at the end this kind of crest factor. You can see here, this is the mix. The blue track is the mix. It's very dense, and these at the bottom is the mastered. version. So you can still see the macro dynamics. The mix, the energy, like I said, moves. Is not flat line from beginning to end. And we can try to listen to the difference between the mix and the master. Let me try to align them somehow. You can try to turn down the master a bit, so trying to level match them.
Blowing wind made you stumble and cry like a dying breed. Breathing for the last time. They will fall asleep and seal their door. Whatever breaks you down. Whatever goes these tears, you never have to hide.
So there you have it, guys. The difference between mix and master is not that much. I mean, if you take the level out of the equation, sonically they sound pretty much the same. There are probably gonna be a few small moves on EQ and compression. And if you're interested, let me know. I can pull up the mastering session and see what was the actual processing. Let me know if you want to see that, if you're interested in that, in the comment section down below. And that's a wrap. This is it for this video. I hope it was informative and I hope you liked it. I'll probably do follow-ups to this because, like I said, this is a very broad subject. But you let me know, guys. Leave your comments down below, questions if you have any about this or about this mix in particular. If you like the video, please don't forget to click the like button. Join us on Facebook and Twitter to stay in touch with us and get all the news about the channel, upcoming videos and series, and access to exclusive content. And if our videos are helping you in any way, please share them on blogs, forums, social media. Keep supporting MixBuzz TV. Subscribe if you haven't already, and see you next time.